So let's try and represent some of these quantities graphically. So I'm going to be working in the complex plane. Real and imaginary axes. Now let me denote. Can I make a thicker pen? Sure. Let's start by marking out the current. So let's call this the current I. Now if I want to calculate, if I want to put the voltage also on this chart, then the voltage across the resistor is going to be something like this. This is just I times R. The resistance is it's just a scalar, so I times R is just a stretching of this same I vector. Alright. Now what if I'm interested in not VR but let's say VL, which is the voltage across the inductor. Now the advantage of using these inductive capacitance, inductive reactance, capacitive reactance, XL and XC, the advantage of using these quantities is that now you can treat them like regular resistors. So you can just say that the voltage across it is just I times XL or I times XC. So VL is going to be I times I omega L. Now you probably know this, if not you can work it out. If you have a complex number and you multiply it by I, all it does is it rotates that complex number anti-clockwise by 90 degrees. So in general, in this case I have I over here. If I multiply I by I as in the current, if I multiply this current by the complex I, it will just rotate it to the left 90 degrees. So I omega L will look something like this. This is VL, which is I omega L. And this angle over here is 90 degrees. So now what is going to be the net voltage across this entire circuit, in the circuit which contains an R and an L? Well, that is just going to be like the vector sum of these two. So if I add these two complex numbers, I end up with something like, let's look for a good color, like this. So this is going to be the overall VL plus VR. But this isn't the end of the story. We also want to introduce a capacitor in this. So let's get rid of all of this. What happens with when I introduce a capacitor? Well, VC is minus I over omega C. Now when you multiply a complex number with minus I, it rotates it clockwise or to the right by 90 degrees. So VC looks something like this. Where this angle is also 90 degrees. So here's VL, here's VC. So now if I want to find the total voltage, I have to take the vector sum of all these three. Let's do that. VL goes this way, VC goes down this way. So the vector sum of these two is probably going to be something like this. So this is VL plus VC, and now the total is VL plus VC over here and VR over here. So this is E, which is VL plus VR plus VC. Sorry. And this is going to be I times the overall inductance. So now based on this, can you guess what the overall inductance should be? Well, this is just from Pythagoras' theorem. You will see that Z square is just R square plus, so here this length is R and this length over here is XL minus XC, the whole square. So from this graph, again, you can see that the formula, you can see what the formula for the inductance should be. This kind of diagram where you're using complex numbers to represent voltages and currents, it has a name. It's called a phasor diagram. It can be quite useful when you're analyzing electrical circuits or also in general optical waves or electrical signals of any kind. Hi everyone, this is lecture 3 of the... Now the last topic that we are going to cover in this section is about using these LR and CR circuits as frequency filters. Let's see what this means. So we'll consider a circuit which has a resistor and a capacitor in series. And we'll try and analyze this again using this method of complex numbers that we have learned. So we know that the current flowing through the circuit is going to be E divided by the total resistance in this circuit. So the resistance I'm going to write now as R minus IXC, or this way. So now the first question is, what is the voltage across the resistor? So this is just IR. So and now what I can do is I can define what is called the gain factor, which is the output voltage divided by the input voltage. Of course, magnitudes, because these are all complex numbers. Now, the output voltage magnitude is just VR square, because I'm interested in the voltage across R. This turns out to be E square, well, not square, ER divided by square root R square plus 1 over omega square C square. And V in, of course, is just E. So the gain is given by R over square root R square plus 1 over omega square C square. Now notice that if omega is very small, then the denominator becomes large and so the gain becomes small. What this means is that if the input signal you're given has a very low frequency, then you're in trouble because you will have very small output. But if you go towards higher frequencies, then the gain becomes larger, so the output voltage can be around the same as the input voltage. So if I make a frequency domain plot, so on the x-axis I'll plot the frequency omega, on the y-axis I'll plot the gain, then the plot will look something like this. So at high frequency you have a reasonable gain. At low frequencies the gain tends to 0. This was the voltage across the resistor. Let's see what happens if I take the voltage across the capacitor. Now voltage across the capacitor is going to be I times XC. So I, as we saw previously, was E divided by R minus, and XC is this. So V out is just Vc, because now we are interested in the voltage across the capacitor. This turns out to be E over omega C squared. And V in, again as before, is just E. So the gain, which is the ratio of these two, turns out to be now this has the opposite feature. Now if you are at low frequencies, then you have a high gain. If you are at high frequencies, you will have a low gain. So over here, the frequency response looks like this. So there are special names for these two features. This kind of feature, where high frequencies get a good gain but the low frequencies don't, is called a high pass filter, because it allows higher frequencies to pass through but it stops low frequency signals. Whereas when you're looking at the voltage across the capacitor, this is called a low pass filter, because it allows lower frequencies to pass through but the higher frequencies get blocked. So this right here is it concludes our discussion about AC theory. So now we are ready to move on to the next module of our syllabus, and this broadly this is a module on semiconductor electronics, and in particular in this module we are going to talk about PN junction diodes and bipolar junction transistors, or these are called BJTs. Call it semiconductor electronics because all of these devices are essentially built out of semiconductors. So far in the first two modules, we only looked at circuits which had what are called passive components, resistors, inductors, capacitors. So they don't take in any power or give out power. They don't need any extra power source to work, for instance. However, now we're going to be talking about diodes and transistors, which are called active components. There's a lot more potential. You can do a lot other things that you can with active components than you can do with passive components. So for example, if you want to pass in some kind of AC input, so this AC input signal will have some magnitude, so some peak voltage, it will have some frequency. And now with these semiconductor devices, you can start to change those properties. You can have voltage amplifiers, you can have frequency changing circuits, you can have frequency filters, you can even have waveform generators. You can start generating sine waves, square waves, triangular waves, and so on and so forth. So this is what we are going to be looking at in this module. We'll start with some basics of diodes, and then we'll go on to some basics of transistors, transistor biasing, and along the way we'll look at some applications, some complicated circuits that you can build with these components. Now, as far as the literature for this is concerned, you can look at Eggleston. Now, in my opinion, Eggleston does not do much justice to these topics. So you can look at, for example, section 3.2 and maybe chapter 3.2 and maybe chapter 4. Eggleston concentrates a fair bit on the physics of what is happening inside the diode. So for example, no, I'll tell you about that later. But there is some amount of information in these chapters, but not as much as we need. Now, the thing with Malvino is Malvino goes to the other extreme. Malvino discusses these devices, these components in extremely minute detail, far more than we need. Of course, if you're professionally doing electronics or if you're doing it as a hobby, then of course it's a great resource. But for the purposes of this course, there is far too much information in there. Let me spell out which chapters are relevant for us. So let's see. Malvino has different editions. I'm referring to the edition that you have access to. Now you're probably freaking out that I have listed so many sections over here, but don't worry. If you look at these chapters of Malvino, you will notice that Malvino basically writes two equations on each page, and there is a very detailed, wordy description of what is going on. There are huge diagrams, lots of numerical examples, and towards the end of most of these chapters, he puts a lot of pages showing you what the actual component looks like, how to read the data sheet, how to troubleshoot problems, and so on and so forth. So out of all of this material, we don't really need so much. I would recommend you look at the topics that I'm doing in class and then go back to Malvino, look at those in detail, read around those and some extra bits here and there. But basically these sections over here are what are relevant for us. You don't need to stray too far beyond them. So that should see you through this module 3.